Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm going to grad school. Can you just put your head down a little bit? If you're new here, my name is Issa and I'm a disabled writer and advocate. And in 2022, I graduated with my master's in communication studies with a focus on disability culture and identity. And at that time, I did not know if I was going to be coming back to academics. I had lots of big feelings about it. I made, I think, a video about some of it. And in this video, I kind of want to just explore my decision to take a break and my decision to go back because I have lots of feelings as a disabled person, going back to the ivory tower of academics and how I am going to be going about this time and what I'm trying to achieve. The first question is, why did I leave? It's definitely something I never thought would happen. Since my freshman year of college, I had decided that PhD was the choice, that I was going to do research, I was going to become a professor, I was going to teach. It was more of the research side that I was most excited about. And so I focused every little part of my college experience on this, and to the point where I was sacrificing time to go spend and meet new people. I didn't date, I didn't do all this stuff, I sacrificed my health, I worked really hard, and didn't treat my body in the way that I probably should have treated it. All in the meantime, during my undergrad, I was experiencing severe progression of my disability. So I became a wheelchair user, and I had to learn how I was going to manage disclosure and manage all of these things as my disability became so visible to other people. And so it all just kind of became wrapped up in this academic identity and what I was going to be doing and who I was going to be at the end of it. And I started my master's program in 2020 and quickly burnt out, because it was the hardest thing I have ever done. And it's not just because it was a graduate program, which is very hard, but also going to a graduate program during the pandemic, which the pandemic is still going on, but specifically during a time when people were so public with their dismissal about the value of people with disabilities. I was seeing stuff posted online that if you can't go to your job then in person, then you've outlived your usefulness. And as someone who's just starting their career, that was deeply up. So I completed my master's thesis looking at 30 high-risk disabled individuals' experience during the pandemic. Basically looking how does high-risk disabled people function, how do they function in a world that tells them that they really shouldn't exist or they have no right to exist. And it was a very heavy subject, and at several points I just felt like my research was going towards studying tragedy for the rest of my life. And I know that's not the disabled experience, and I knew that's not the disabled experience. Tragedy is one part of that. It doesn't have to be the totality. And I was just so deep in my grief, and I was surrounded by grief in the disability community, that I just couldn't see a way out. And I couldn't see my research being anything but grief. And I needed to figure out a way and a place to exist with that grief. And on top of that, while I'm dealing with all this huge level of grief and loss, I had faculty members who were just getting introduced to Disability 101, who were supposed to be major people in my program. And then just to sprinkle it on there, I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder because apparently the pandemic was deeply triggering and made my coping mechanisms for the bipolar disorder just completely fall apart. And that's what my therapist says, at least. And so I was starting the journey of medication, diagnosis, and what does this mean, and how do I function in a world where I apparently had been using my hypomania to be successful, and directing it, and all of these other bad things were part of that, the good. So it was just a complicated time. I don't know why I'm yelling at you, I'm sorry. But on top of it, the last piece of my mental health and my worldview had completely shifted with the pandemic, because I had thought that academics would save me. I thought that being smart and having high academic achievements would make me seem valuable and not as easily dismissed as other members of my community. And I didn't know how to handle the fact that it did absolutely nothing in the minds of other people, because I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm going to grad school, I'm like achieving things. And even now, sometimes like I'll struggle with that. And it's something that I have had to work on the last 2 years. Like I said, I'm in therapy. It's something we talk about a lot, is a complex that I draped my academic identity as like a shield against everything else. And it's complicated and difficult and hard to explain, but it doesn't make me a good member of the disability community. It doesn't make me the advocate I want to be, and it doesn't make me the member of the community, because like none of it matters. Like the worth, the value, or whatever, like all of that is just weird capitalistic shit that we come up with. So I looked at my life and I saw a whole bunch of tragedy, and as a former Wish kid, I decided I was going to go to Disney World, and I was going to try to work at Disney and work with people with disabilities and help and do all of these things. And I am very thankful for my time at Disney. And I just kept finding myself like wanting to do research and talking with people. I'm like, oh my God, I really want to do a study. Where's the IRB that I can fill out? How do I do this ethically? I wrote some things, I gave them to leadership. I wrote something and gave it to my new team. I have done disability advocacy stuff on a small scale, but I want to do it on a big scale. I want my entire life to be able to focus on this, and I don't want to have to wait, 5 to 10 years to build through a company to do this like disability advocacy in such a small level. That like vacations are very important. I still believe in like being able to have space to be a kid, but I also want to do this in a way that empowers and helps people resist and helps people understand and really hear their own voice. And that is communication studies. So last summer, well, not last summer, but like last spring, I had a paper that I hadn't finished for one of my classes. And I decided, if I can finish this and I can submit it to conference and I can go to that conference and I can do all of these things, and I like set up markers. I'm like, if I can do all of this self-motivated, maybe it's time to return. Maybe it's time for me to do the thing. And really kind of gave myself time and space to heal, and time and space to reflect, and time and space to read and learn and try to become a better disability advocate before I became somebody who studied disability. So what am I doing differently? Number one, I worked really hard to try to find a graduate program that was going to provide me the support that I wanted. And that means that it's a collaborative community. It's not as competitive. One that isn't afraid to push back ideas. I talked with many professors that were very, like the conversations we had about research, it wasn't just kind of like whatever I said about disability, they assumed is true, or everything, or not even like a pushing back in the way that I was used to, where it's like, well, is that legitimate argument? It was more of like, let's look at this from deeper. Let's look at this further. Let's look at this more on concepts of critical power and marginalization and resistance and all of these things. And I'm very, very excited about that. And I'm very excited about working and acknowledging that this is my career and this is what I'm going to be doing to sustain myself as well. That it's not just me that's going into work and support. I felt like it was my divine calling. I do think it's the thing that I'm supposed to do in the world. I don't think that I need to sacrifice myself for it. And that is something that I've worked with my therapist a lot. As part of that, I need to challenge myself to be more authentic about my needs as a disabled person. It is definitely one of my weakest points. It's something that I'm trying to deconstruct on this idea that like, oh, I can do this all myself. I don't need any help. I don't want to make people think that I'm weak. And that I do need to ask for help sometimes. And a lot of times that I need to ask for help is because the world was made inaccessible and it's artificially inaccessible. Like it's not natural. It's not the way that things just have to be. And by being more authentic, I can provide more nuance and do more and do less at the same time, and like be more of myself without having to perform, I feel. I also really want community, and I'm really hoping that I move to a space in an area, and I will fight to the end of my very last breath for online communities. And I love the people who support me across the United States. I'm desperate for in-person community though, and I have been slowly coming out as queer over the last 4 years and discovering what that means for me. And I'm at a point where I really would like to have a community of people. Like, I went to this queer owned bookstore that still required masks in Minnesota, and am I going to find that in Florida? We'll find out, but that's what I'm aiming for. That's the space that I'm aiming for, is to find a place where I can exist authentically in my multiple identities and not just prioritize the disabled one over everything else, because I have no choice to do that. So I am officially going back to grad school. I'm going to be teaching. I have a teaching assistantship. I am very excited. I'm also incredibly nervous and feel like I'm waiting so much because it is March and I'm not moving in until August, and I have the whole summer. So what am I doing with my summer? Anyway, thanks for listening. I'm sorry I've been gone. This is what's been going on in my life. I've been so stressed about the grad school thing. So hopefully you'll get more videos now. Bye!